is GPS, the global public square. Welcome to all of you in the United States and around the world. I'm Bianna Goldriga filling in for Fareed, who's off this week, but he left an interview and more that we will bring you shortly. Today on the program, it's been 3 months since the U.S. and Israel began their war against Iran. I'll dig into what America has lost and what it has gained in that time with the author Robert Kagan. Then the World Cup is where the great game of geopolitics meets the beautiful game of soccer. Or is it football? Even the name is cause for international dispute. I'll ask an expert about the other global controversies surrounding the upcoming tournament. And later in the show, Fareed left us a beautiful essay about the parts of human intelligence that artificial intelligence will never be able to replace. The United States and Iran teeter on the brink of a deal that would cease hostilities between the two countries for 60 days, while both sides attempt to iron out a more lasting agreement. At stake are both traffic through the Strait of Hormuz and therefore global energy prices and Iran's nuclear ambitions. Joining me now is the author and foreign policy analyst Robert Kagan. Bob, it's good to have you on the program. You have been quite critical of this war in a number of articles that you've written for The Atlantic magazine. The most recent headline, Trump's Endgame is Surrender. An earlier piece is subtitled, Washington Can't Reverse or Control the Consequences of Losing This War. But the main issue Trump says he went to war over is Iran's highly enriched uranium. And that is still to be negotiated, even if this deal or this memorandum of understanding is signed. So how is that defeat, let alone irreversible, when the central question is still at play here?
Well, that is not the defeat. I think that, what's happening and what happens or doesn't happen with the HEU remains to be seen. I'm guessing probably nothing is going to happen, but the defeat has to do with the Strait. And by the way, I'm quite skeptical that we're at the brink of an agreement, because the Iranians are not going to allow the Strait to be turned back to the way it was before the war began. They're not going to return it to being an international waterway. It's going to be open, but it's going to be open under new management, namely Iranian management. And that is a game changer in the region and in the world, because it gives Iran the power to punish nations who are not behaving the way it wants to. It gives Iran control over who gets in the Strait and who doesn't get in the Strait, who has difficulty getting through and who doesn't. And that is going to have a major effect on the geopolitical situation.
Yeah, Iran has definitely proven that they can choke off the Strait of Hormuz and that the U.S. can essentially do nothing to stop them. Do you buy this narrative that the president wasn't aware that this would be the leverage that Iran would go to if put in this position? This is something that a number of military experts, political experts for decades have been warning of. How do you think this happened?
I think the president, who's a very short-term oriented person, saw a glittering prize, which was working with the Israelis to take out and destroy the Iranian regime. I think that Bibi Netanyahu and his advisors sold Trump on this plan, and told him he would be the great hero. And he didn't think about the next day too much. But I'm fairly confident that he was told by his advisors that this was a problem. At least they would have been horribly remiss in their duties if they had not told him, because every administration for decades has considered this question and come out with the answer that this is the problem, that Iran would be able to retaliate in ways that we would find unacceptable. So that was one of the turns to our doing this. And Trump just simply disregarded it, because, as he often does, he saw a chance for a big win for him, and he didn't think too much about the consequences.
And now that precedent has been set by Iran. You mentioned Israel. Something that we heard from President Trump last week was now demanding that Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and others join the Abraham Accords as condition for an Iran deal. You have said that this war has destroyed the Abraham Accords. You've also called them hollow, suggesting that peace between countries that were never going to fight was really, in essence, a point as to why the Abraham Accords didn't carry much weight. That is somewhat of a contradiction, I would argue, but even more significantly, we've seen trade boom among Abraham Accord nations. The deal survived the Gaza war. So how does that not cut against your argument?
Well, whatever the virtues of the Abraham Accords, I'm not saying they had no virtues. I just don't think they were very significant in terms of keeping peace. But that's beside the point. The fact is the Abraham Accords are dead now. The United States has demonstrated to the Gulf allies, and Israel has demonstrated to its Gulf allies or its Gulf friends, that we are incapable of protecting them in this situation. They took a pounding. They are the ones who are mostly pushing for a peace right now because they don't want to continue that. And more importantly, the notion that anyone is going to sign up now in an agreement with Israel and the United States after Israel and the United States have effectively lost this conflict to Iran is ludicrous. And the truth is, and this has been well reported, that those countries that Trump was talking about trying to get to sign up with the Abraham Accords were basically either amused or stunned that he would make this suggestion right now. Israel's a pariah in the region, and no one, least of all the Saudis, are now going to be signing up for the Abraham Accords. This is part of Trump's, self-delusion or attempt to delude the rest of us. But in any case, it's not happening.
Yeah, the reporting said that this demand was met with stunned silence. But then what do you say to those who point to the strengthened ties that we've seen between Israel and the UAE in particular?
I think that's over. I think that's old news. I think that the consequences of this war is that the Gulf states are now going to have to make their arrangements with Iran in order to survive economically. They depend on access to the strait, obviously. And so long as Iran controls the strait, they're going to have to make a deal with Iran. We see what Oman is already doing in terms of working with Iran on procedures for controlling the strait. Other Gulf states will also have to make their arrangements. I don't think people understand, perhaps, what is actually going on in this conflict right now. We lost this war back in March when Trump decided he didn't want to suffer or didn't want to see the region suffer from Iranian attacks. He called for the ceasefire. There's been a ceasefire ever since. He has not been willing to resume the conflict, and the Iranians, who are perfectly aware of that, are therefore not willing to make any concessions, and they haven't made any concessions.
Robert Kagan, thank you so much for the time. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Up next on GPS, the Pope has issued a sweeping manifesto on artificial intelligence, calling to disarm the
Craig Ferguson, American on Purpose.